Claire Monroe had shoved a popsicle stick up a grown man's urethra exactly 36 seconds before the hospital ceiling exploded. The man, his name was Curtis, and he had swallowed a Lego 2 hours earlier, screamed as Claire fumbled with gloves and tried to explain that no, the stick wasn't standard procedure, but yes, she had seen it work on a raccoon once. The ER was bedlam. One nurse was crying in the supply closet, a doctor was having an existential crisis over a burrito order, and the floor smelled faintly of burning toast and hand sanitizer. Claire hadn't slept in 2 days. Her blood caffeine levels were bordering on chemical warfare. And then the aliens came. It wasn't flashy. There was no beam of light or dramatic humming. 1 second she was in Trauma Bay 4 with a ruptured spleen and an overconfident intern, and the next she was weightless, dangling upside down in some kind of glowing tube. Her stethoscope floated by her face like a ghost. A voice, deep and full of static, growled something unintelligible. Claire blinked hard. She'd seen a lot of weird things on night shifts, like the man who tried to superglue his eyebrows back on, but this was new. A panel hissed open and 3 figures stepped in. They looked like someone had crossed a praying mantis with a gym bro. All chitin and biceps. The tallest one wore what looked like a crown of battery packs and spoke in flawless, accented English. Subject C. Monroe. Confirmed. Target acquired. Claire squinted. Was this a debt collection thing? Had her student loans finally evolved into bounty hunters? Listen, she said, raising her hands, if this is about the parking ticket on my Hyundai, you've got the wrong person. The one with the glowing shoulder pads stepped forward and jabbed a device against her neck. Everything went sideways. When she came to, she was strapped to a table that smelled suspiciously like expired bleach. Alien lights buzzed overhead. The room looked like the inside of an espresso machine if it had a vendetta. One wall displayed her face, sweaty, annoyed, mid-scream, and beside it, subject classification, Earth's Weapon Alpha. Claire blinked. Weapon Alpha? She croaked. No. I'm a nurse. I give tetanus shots and break up fistfights in waiting rooms. I once got stabbed with a pencil by a 6-year-old named Kyle. But the aliens weren't listening. They were arguing amongst themselves, words like containment protocol and mental destabilizer, and is she armed flying back and forth. One of them approached her with what looked like a whisk attached to a car battery. We are initiating neuroprobe, it said. Claire, whose last neurological trauma had involved tequila and an inflatable pool, rolled her eyes. Be my guest, she muttered. But fair warning, there's a lot of caffeine and repressed rage in there. The moment the probe touched her temple, the entire ship convulsed. Sirens screamed. Lights flashed red. A screen nearby displayed the word system failure in 17 alien dialects. Smoke poured from a ceiling vent. Someone screamed in what sounded like interpretive yodeling. She hadn't done anything. Just existed. Which, frankly, was kind of her thing. The aliens backed away, terrified. Her neural pathways are unstable, one hissed. She's immune to the scan. Unstable? Claire said, insulted. I've been on a triple shift with no lunch break. Of course I'm unstable. Try working 12 hours with patients who Google their symptoms, and tell me what they think they have. One guy said he was allergic to gravity. The commander stared at her, aghast. You survived the probe. Only beings with adaptive psychotic threading can do that. I survived a Tuesday night on Taco Tuesday, she snapped. A guy came in with a taco shell embedded in his ear canal. Ear canal? You think your little brain blender scares me? The crew murmured in fear. Claire, still strapped down, sighed dramatically. Do you guys have coffee? She asked. Or like painkillers? Or is this more of a probing and dismemberment type of abduction? There was a pause. Then, slowly, the commander motioned to release her. She stood up, adjusted her scrubs, and stretched. Okay, ground rules, she said. No one probes me, no one points weapons at me, and if I don't get caffeine in the next 15 minutes, I might become genuinely violent. They obeyed. Claire was marched through corridors that glowed purple and smelled like battery acid. Doors whooshed open at her presence. She noticed aliens shrinking back, some muttering words like Omega-class anomaly and internal disruptor. She wasn't sure what any of it meant, but the moment they handed her what passed for coffee, a steaming cup of something between motor oil and regret, she chugged it with the determination of a burnout intern in flu season. She turned to the nearest guard, a wide-eyed alien with a neck like a tree trunk. "So what exactly do you think I am?" she asked. He trembled. You are the most dangerous human on Earth." Claire snorted coffee out of her nose. "Me?" She laughed. "I once gave CPR to a guy who was faking a seizure to get out of a date. I'm not dangerous. I'm barely functional." The guard didn't answer. He just backed away slowly. Later, as she sat in a room with what appeared to be a holographic fire pit, reviewing what had just happened, it began to dawn on her. They weren't just afraid of her. They thought she was something else. Maybe it was a case of mistaken identity. Maybe some poor secret agent named C. Monroe was out there right now, wondering why their extraction team hadn't shown up. Or maybe, and this chilled her slightly, they were right. Not because she was some elite assassin or secret weapon, but because, when you've survived a decade in emergency medicine, you've already faced the worst the universe can throw at you. Screaming toddlers, delusional Karens, weaponized farts, surgeons with god complexes, budget cuts, vomit, blood, bad vending machine sandwiches. Claire had lived through it all. And maybe, just maybe, that made her the most dangerous creature in the galaxy. And somewhere, deep in the ship, a terrified mercenary whispered into a communicator. "She's awake." And she drank the engine coolant. Voluntarily. The voice on the other end hissed back. "Dear stars, what have we captured?" Claire woke up face down in what she could only describe as an alien break room. The table she had drooled on looked suspiciously like a glowing car hood, and the chair beneath her buzzed every few seconds like it was annoyed to be sat on. Her mouth tasted like old pennies and space curry, and her arm had been wrapped in some kind of glowing bandage that pulsed in sync with her heartbeat. Somewhere nearby, a machine was humming like a nervous toaster. She sat up slowly, blinking against the low blue lighting. Two aliens in the corner immediately stopped talking and stared at her like she just kicked their dog. One of them leaned toward the other and whispered something that sounded like cautious awe and deep regret. Claire gave them a thumbs up and swung her legs off the table. Her entire body protested. It wasn't the first time she'd passed out after downing a questionable beverage, but it was the first time the beverage turned out to be hyper-pressurized star coolant. In her defense, the cup had been labeled in an alphabet she didn't recognize, and she'd been very thirsty. A voice crackled through a nearby speaker. "Subject C. Monroe has regained consciousness. Initiate Protocol Whitecoat." She blinked. Protocol Whitecoat. Was that supposed to be some high-level containment strategy? Did they name it after the lab coats? Or worse, after her? Either way, she didn't like the sound of it. The door hissed open, and two guards stepped in, flanked by a creature who looked like a space walrus wearing surgical scrubs. It waddled toward her with a data pad and a nervous twitch. "Claire Monroe," said the creature, blinking all four of its eyes. "I am Medtech Officer Nalik. I will now commence an assessment of your combat anatomy." Claire stared at him. "My what?" "Your combat anatomy." He held up the pad, which showed a full-body scan of her with arrows pointing at her elbows, kneecaps, and spleen. "We must understand how you disable enemies so quickly. Your medical tools are not standard weaponry, yet your kill count on the lower decks was substantial." "Kill count?" She stood up, nearly tripping over a tube. "I haven't killed anyone. I gave a guy a glucose injection and slapped someone with a clipboard. That's not combat. That's Tuesday." "Nevertheless," said Nalik, "your chart shows biological improvisation unmatched by any known species. Your hands produce unknown fluids under stress. You disoriented our psychic interrogator with your memory sequences. And you bit a security drone." "I thought it was a Roomba," she muttered. The guards exchanged glances. Claire rubbed her face. The situation was unraveling faster than a hospital gown in a wind tunnel. Renalik tapped his pad again. May I begin the probe? Claire held up a hand. You try to probe me again, and I swear I will medically induce a foot in your face. The creature backed away. A moment later, another door hissed open and a new alien stepped in. This one was slimmer, with luminous skin and a jawline that could cut glass. He wore a long coat, too many belts, and an expression that said he either wanted to recruit her or arrest her. This is Commander Telix, said Renalik. He will now discuss your mission. Claire crossed her arms. I don't have a mission. I have student loans and 3 unpaid parking tickets. Telix studied her carefully. You were acquired due to a transmission that identified you as Earth's Alpha-class tactical medic. The message included visuals of your combat with a hostile human and the use of unconventional tools. Combat? Are you talking about the time I tackled a guy high on bath salts in the waiting room using a laundry cart and a mop? Yes, he said solemnly. That video was impressive. Especially the part where you threw the mop handle like a spear. We thought it was ceremonial. Claire sighed. That wasn't a spear. That was rage and lack of overtime pay. Telix paced slowly. Regardless, you are now a matter of intergalactic security. Several factions have taken interest in you. One has offered 6 million quarks for your capture. Another wishes to clone you. Clone me? Claire laughed. Great. Another me with no health insurance. That's exactly what the galaxy needs. We require your cooperation to prevent war, Telix said. You must inform us of Earth's medical warfare capabilities. Claire took a deep breath. Look, I don't know what kind of backwards Google Translate messed up my ER security footage, but I'm not a weapon. I'm just really good at staying alive in stupid situations. There's a difference. Telix nodded slowly, then gestured to a nearby console. Come. There is someone who wishes to speak with you. She followed him down a corridor filled with floating orbs and humming walls. They entered a chamber that looked like a fusion of a cathedral and a server room. In the center stood a giant screen, flickering. A moment later, a face appeared. Claire nearly dropped her jaw. It was her. A distorted, glitchy image of herself in her scrubs, yelling at a hospital administrator while waving a bedpan. Subject Monroe, the voice from the screen said. You are responsible for inciting the hospital riot of Sector 12. You struck a ranking medical officer with a sanitary device and uploaded a manifesto on galactic nurse independence. Your words have ignited a movement. Claire stared. That wasn't a manifesto. That was a Facebook rant. The screen glitched again. You are now a symbol of rebellion. A nurse who does not obey. Who treats friend and foe alike. Who weaponizes compassion with terrifying results. I gave a guy an enema in a broom closet, she whispered. We know, said Telix. It's why they fear you. She didn't know whether to laugh, scream, or demand a raise. Instead, she muttered, Can I at least get real coffee around here? The room went quiet. Renalik raised a trembling hand. We can offer you caftraxil syrup, he said. It is potent and may cause temporary hallucinations. Claire rolled her eyes. Close enough. As she took the mug and sipped, her vision blurred and the edges of reality softened. Somewhere in the ship, alarms went off again. Another faction had found them. Battle stations activated. Weapons charged. And Claire stood there in the middle of it all, sipping her alien coffee and watching as soldiers scrambled past her in chaos. It was oddly familiar. She adjusted her scrubs, turned to Telix, and sighed. Fine. I'll help you. He blinked. You will? Yeah, she said. But I want 3 things. A translator that works. A break every 4 hours. And no more mind probes. Telix gave a solemn nod. Agreed. And one more thing, Claire added, walking toward the control panel. If we're gonna save the galaxy, someone's gonna have to teach you people proper hand hygiene. And just like that, Earth's most dangerous nurse took her first step into galactic warfare. The bounty went viral before Claire even finished her second mug of alien coffee. One moment she was explaining the difference between ibuprofen and intravenous antimatter to a confused technician with 6 fingers, and the next, a hologram projected into the room showing her face spinning slowly with a pulsing red banner underneath that read, Earth Entity C. Monroe, alive. Reward, 6 million quarks. Dead or alive. Preferably contained. She nearly choked on her drink. Telex looked up from his terminal, blinking rapidly as more alerts streamed in, each one more absurd than the last. Factions across the quadrant were suddenly interested. Pirates. Corporate warlords. An alien reality show that specialized in live bounty hunts. It seemed the moment she stopped being their hostage, she had become everyone else's target. Claire crossed her arms and glared at the projection. Dead or alive? She muttered. They didn't even use a good picture. I look like I'm mid-sneeze. Renalik shuffled in nervously, holding a datapad that shook slightly in his thick hands. We must reroute, he said. If we follow the designated path, we risk interception. Claire tapped her fingers on the control panel. Can't we just call them? Tell them I'm not who they think I am? It is not so simple, Telex replied. You have become a symbol. People don't care what you are, only what they believe you represent. Claire rubbed her temples. Fantastic. I'm a walking misunderstanding with a price tag. Ilix entered the room, grinning as always, his long limbs bouncing with excitement. You are famous, he said. Even got your own hashtag. I have a what? Yes. The translator calls it Nurse of Doom. Also trending, Bedpan Avenger. Claire groaned and buried her face in her hands. Ilix wasn't just another crew member. He was an engineer, young, twitchy, and absolutely obsessed with Earth culture. Claire had caught him watching daytime television dramas in the cargo bay, mimicking soap opera lines and crying into a towel. He had declared Claire his new muse and insisted she had the perfect tragic backstory to be a main character. Claire disagreed. She had no interest in starring in anyone's drama, let alone a galactic one. Still, Ilix had a plan. He leaned in, eyes gleaming. We fake your death. What? It is classic Earth strategy. Very dramatic. Very final. He waved his datapad excitedly. We simulate a hull breach, jettison a dummy, and broadcast your biometric signal as terminated. Then we flee to the asteroid belt and vanish. Claire blinked. That's actually not terrible. Thank you. I based it off a soap called All My Star Children. She looked at Telex, who nodded slowly. It may be the only way to avoid open conflict. If they believe you are no longer in play, we can regroup. Claire sighed. Fine. But the dummy better look like me. And I want a better picture used for my fake obituary. A few hours later, they stood on the lower deck, watching the mechanical duplicate of Claire float in a sealed pod, dressed in her borrowed scrubs and holding a coffee cup. A plasma leak was simulated, and the escape hatch ejected the dummy into the void with a dramatic hiss. Sensors flared. An explosion echoed in the silence of space. Ilix clapped with pride. I even added dramatic music to the data burst, he said proudly. You put music in my death report? Yes. It enhances emotional believability. What song? Earth's classic, Careless Whisper. Claire stared at him. Trust me, he said. The transmission went out. Factions received the signal. Tracking beacons went silent. Across the quadrant, the galactic internet mourned the loss of their newest symbol with hastily made tribute videos and questionable merchandise. One pirate group offered a memorial discount on hostage insurance. Claire watched all of it from the safety of the asteroid belt, curled up in a small observation dome with a blanket and what passed for popcorn. It should have worked. It would have worked. If only betrayal didn't travel faster than light. 3 hours into their celebration of not being hunted, the ship lurched violently. Red lights flared. Sirens screamed. Unidentified boarding vessel approaching, shouted the intercom. Hull breach imminent. Telex burst into the room, eyes wide. We've been found. But how? Claire jumped up. Ilix looked horrified. Someone leaked our coordinates. It must have been from inside. Someone betrayed us. The ship shuddered again. Claire and Telix raced toward the main deck. The vessel outside was massive, covered in dark armor, and insignias Claire couldn't read. Grappling lines fired. The airlock creaked. Battle stations, Telix shouted. Claire grabbed a medical kit. "What are you doing?" he asked. "I don't know," she yelled back. Instinct. "I'm gonna patch people up and maybe throw syringes if it comes to that." The invaders stormed the corridor seconds later. They weren't mercenaries this time. These were sleek, organized, and wearing matching armor that looked disturbingly like hazmat suits. Their leader stepped forward, holding a scanner that beeped the moment it pointed at Claire. "Subject Monroe," he said. "We were informed you perished. Our employer is displeased." "And you are?" "The cleaners," he said coldly. "We specialize in removing problems." Claire held up a syringe. "I specialize in removing infections. Let's see who's faster." Chaos erupted. Plasma bolts sizzled past her ears. Claire ducked behind a console and dragged a wounded crew member to cover. Ilix fired a stolen blaster like he was in a space telenovela. Telix barked orders, trying to repel the boarders. But they were outnumbered. Claire knew it. And then she remembered the auxiliary medical bay. She shouted to Ilix. "The gas system. Can we reroute the anesthetics into the main vent?" He blinked. "Yes." "But why?" "Do it," she said. Within minutes, the vents hissed. A sweet-smelling fog began to fill the corridor. The attackers slowed, their movements lagging. One dropped their weapon and began humming softly. Another sat down and started crying. Within 10 minutes, the entire boarding party was unconscious or extremely confused. Ilix turned to her in awe. "That was brilliant." Claire shrugged. "We use it on difficult patients who won't sleep before surgery." Telix looked around, stunned. "You just repelled a professional assault team using medical gas." Claire looked down at her empty syringe and grinned. "Told you I was dangerous." But even as the boarders were contained and the ship began to stabilize, the realization dawned on all of them. Someone aboard had tipped them off. Claire was no longer just a galactic curiosity or meme. She was a pawn in something bigger. Someone wanted her in play. Or dead. And now, she couldn't trust anyone. As the crew regrouped and the wounded were tended to, Claire sat in the medbay, staring at the wall. She had faked her death. She had escaped capture. She had gassed an elite team into a musical stupor. And still, she wasn't safe. Telix entered the room quietly. "We'll find the leak," he said. Claire nodded. "You better. Because if I get betrayed again, I'm prescribing a full dose of vengeance." Telix hesitated. "You're not really a killer. You're a healer." Claire didn't look away. "Yeah," she said. "But even healers know how to hurt when they have to." Claire paced the corridor with the intensity of a surgeon prepping for a triple organ transplant during an earthquake. The ship's lighting flickered above her, casting long shadows that made her look more menacing than exhausted. Which was impressive, considering she was mostly running on recycled air and whatever passed for protein bars on this floating toaster. The med bay behind her was filled with groaning patients, bandaged mercenaries, and a growing number of recruits who were now calling her chief. She hadn't asked for that title. In fact, she'd strongly objected to it. But the ship was falling apart, the crew was leaderless, and apparently, organizing triage while yelling at 3 aliens and suturing a bullet wound with dental floss made her the closest thing they had to a general. It started small. A medic complained about working 16-hour shifts without sanitation breaks. Claire agreed. Then someone else chimed in about the lack of food rations. Claire found some in storage and redistributed them. Within a day, she was leading impromptu staff meetings in the break room while waving a scalpel and demanding better lighting in the ICU chamber. Within 2 days, half the ship was following her orders. Not out of fear, but because she made sense. Telix noticed. So did Renalik. And Ilix, who was busy crafting a theme song for their movement, complete with dramatic strings and a recurring trumpet solo that played every time Claire entered the room. It wasn't a rebellion. Not at first. It was a mutiny of logic. The kind that happens when people are tired of being led by paranoia and bureaucracy and instead want someone who can stitch a vein, manage an inventory crisis, and call out stupidity when she sees it. Claire did not enjoy being in charge. But she also hated watching people get shot in the femur because someone forgot to label the med blasters. By the third day, things escalated. One of the old command crew, a four-eyed tactical officer with an ego bigger than his vocabulary, tried to reassert authority by threatening Clare with confinement. Clare, in turn, handed him a bedpan, told him to clean up the plasma spill in Corridor 7, and walked away. He tried to arrest her. She injected him with a mild paralytic she called nurse juice. The crew clapped. And just like that, the line had been drawn. They called it the revolt of the whitecoat. It wasn't violent. Not at first. But it was decisive. Clare, armed with a stethoscope, a mop, and a legion of overworked, underappreciated ship medics and junior engineers, took control of the bridge without firing a shot. Telek stood aside, watching it unfold like a man witnessing a prophecy come true. He didn't fight it. He simply adjusted course to match the new reality. Claire took the captain's chair by accident. She had tripped while dragging a supply crate and landed in it. The bridge crew stared at her, silent. Someone saluted. Ilex played his theme song. Claire groaned, leaned back, and said the words that would be etched in ship history forever. Fine. Let's not crash. From that moment forward, she was in command. Not officially, not in any recorded manual. But when the plasma reactors needed maintenance, they asked her. When the external sensors detected anomalies, they asked her. When someone broke a limb, or had a panic attack or wanted to organize a karaoke night to boost morale, they asked her. She led with sarcasm, caffeine, and a shocking ability to compartmentalize emotional trauma. She patched wounds and patched peace between angry departments. She drafted a ship-wide hygiene protocol that involved mandatory hand washing and a surprising number of stickers. She coined a phrase, "Sanitation is our salvation." The crew started using it unironically. Then came the nebula. It was uncharted, unstable, and very illegal to enter. Which meant it was the perfect place to hide while they figured out who had sold Claire out, and who was still hunting her. Claire stared at it on the main display, arms crossed, lips pursed. "That looks like a purple lung with anger issues," she said. Telex nodded beside her. "It is dangerous. So is a 10-year-old with scissors and a sugar high. We going in or not?" The ship entered. The nebula shimmered around them like a storm of dying stars. Systems blinked. Alarms pinged. The air turned oddly metallic, and Claire's hair started floating from the static. They made it through, barely. But what they found on the other side made her heart freeze. A Terran satellite. Old. Abandoned. A rusting piece of human technology left to drift through space decades ago, long forgotten. But it was still active. And broadcasting. Claire entered the satellite's frequency manually, and what played through the speakers nearly made her drop the control panel. It was Grey's Anatomy. Episodes. Full seasons. The signal was looping them on repeat. The crew gathered around, mesmerized. For most, it was the first time they'd seen Earth culture in any form other than memes and bounty footage. Claire watched them watch. Their expressions were strange. Curious. Moved. "They are emotionally invested," Malik said in awe. "It's a show about doctors being overdramatic while performing surgeries with perfect hair," Claire said. "It is glorious," Ilix whispered. An idea sparked in her mind. If the crew was watching this and absorbing even the fake parts of Earth medicine, maybe she could use it. She called for a training drill. Not a battle simulation. A field surgery boot camp. Aliens lined up. She handed out gloves. Masks. Makeshift scalpels. They watched the show and copied the motions. Claire walked among them, correcting posture, explaining what was real and what was television nonsense. "Do not shock a flatline," she said 17 times in 1 hour. They learned. Fast. They wanted to. And not just because she told them to. Because they respected her. Claire stood on the deck later that night, alone. Stars pulsed outside the window. The satellites still drifted nearby, whispering the words of a fictional doctor who once screamed about having too many patients and not enough time. She understood that feeling more than anyone. Telix joined her. "They follow you now," he said quietly. "They're just desperate." "No. They trust you. You've shown them something new." Claire exhaled. "If by new you mean exhaustion and sarcasm, then sure." He turned to her. "You turned chaos into purpose." She didn't respond. But inside she knew something had changed. She had led a mutiny, survived betrayal, and created a team of medical warriors trained on the principles of primetime drama and her own never-quit attitude. And somewhere in the universe, others were still watching. Waiting. Claire wasn't just a name on a bounty anymore. She was a symbol. A movement. A problem too complicated to contain. And as she looked into the stars, she whispered to herself the only truth she still believed in. No one survives this long in an ER without becoming a little bit dangerous. The truth came out not with a bang but with an error message on a printer. It was just after breakfast, or what passed for breakfast on a ship stocked with protein paste and something Ilix called crunchy moon flakes. Claire was reviewing a patient file when a stack of old bounty records printed out from the ship's dormant archive system. She hadn't even known they had a printer. Renalik had tripped over it during his morning sweep, muttered something about obsolete tech, and left it humming in the corner. Claire picked up the pages out of habit. And there it was. Her file. The original bounty trigger. The reason half the galaxy thought she was some Earth-made war machine wrapped in scrubs and sarcasm. Except the file wasn't about her. Not really. It was a hospital incident report from Earth. Dated 2 years back. The file had been mislabeled in transmission. It referred to a C. Monroe, who had physically assaulted the CEO of a private hospital conglomerate during a labor dispute involving nurse staffing ratios. Claire remembered it vividly. The man had cut funding, reduced break time, and issued a memo suggesting that nurses smile more to improve patient satisfaction scores. Claire had responded by hitting him in the face with a stainless steel bedpan. The altercation was caught on security camera and became something of an underground legend in Earth's medical circles. Somehow, someway, that clip had made it into the intergalactic network and been interpreted as evidence of a weaponized Earth operative initiating a targeted strike on a healthcare overlord. Claire stared at the report in disbelief. It even included her old hospital badge photo. Hair frizzy, eyes dead inside, her ID lanyard half-snapped from some long-forgotten scuffle. A tiny note at the bottom had been auto-translated by alien code. Subject exhibits violent leadership over human healthcare hierarchy. High threat potential. Status rogue. Ilix hovered beside her, reading over her shoulder. You assaulted a corporate leader with a medical bowl? It was a bedpan. Was he dangerous? Only to payroll budgets and human dignity. Ilix nodded as if that made perfect sense. Claire brought the file to Telix, who examined it carefully before sitting back in stunned silence. So this entire situation began because of a clerical error and a misunderstood disciplinary incident? Claire dropped into the seat across from him and groaned. They thought I was some revolutionary super nurse when really I was just pissed and underpaid. The implications sank in. The bounty. The chases. The failed assassination attempts. The weird cult on Zarnak 7 who had chanted her name and offered her ceremonial gloves. All of it based on a misfiled video of a hospital meltdown and a highly expressive swing of a stainless steel object. But the galaxy believed it. And now, undoing that belief would be more dangerous than letting it live. Telix steepled his fingers. If the factions knew the truth, they might still pursue you. Not because of what you are, but because of what they fear you might become. So I'm a walking what if. Yes. And those are often more dangerous than weapons. Claire leaned forward. Then maybe it's time we stop playing defense. You want to go public? Not exactly. I want to use their own fear against them. You've got a ship full of medics and engineers, a rogue nurse with a criminal misunderstanding hanging over her head, And half the galaxy watching like this is some interstellar reality show. Let's give them a reason to back off. She spent the next day writing. Not a manifesto. Not a threat. A proposal. A galaxy-wide healthcare initiative. Claire called it the Interstellar Patient Protocol. At first, the idea seemed ridiculous, even to her. But the more she wrote, the more it made sense. Equal access to emergency care. Medbay neutrality during conflict. The right to treatment without regard to species or political allegiance. It was absurdly idealistic and entirely unachievable. But that was the point. She wasn't trying to solve everything. She was trying to make a statement. If they were going to call her Earth's most dangerous healer, she'd make them regret not listening sooner. Ilix added a visual presentation with animations that were unintentionally disturbing. Renalik edited the medical jargon into galactic standard language. Telix arranged for a signal burst that would reach every major channel, alliance, and political entity within 6 parsecs. The transmission was scheduled to go out during the annual Galactic Security Council Summit, which meant Claire had roughly 6 hours to figure out what she was going to say on the live feed once every major power tuned in, expecting either a threat or a surrender. She paced the command deck as the countdown ticked closer. Her palms were sweaty. Her scrubs were slightly stained from a plasma burn she'd patched up in engineering. Her voice felt tight in her throat. She wasn't a leader. She was a nurse who got caught up in galactic politics because of a video no one understood properly. Telix approached her calmly. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to be undeniable. She nodded. When the feed went live, Claire stood in front of the central console, the stars behind her like a curtain of glowing judgment. Her face was serious. Her voice calm. Greetings, she began, to the 127 governing entities watching this, and to the others who tuned in out of morbid curiosity. I am Claire Monroe. I am not a weapon. I am not a threat. I'm just a nurse. There was silence. Across the stars, thousands of ships received the feed. On warships and in palaces, screens lit up with her image. I didn't ask for any of this. I didn't want it. I was abducted, hunted, chased, and nearly spaced because of a file that misunderstood what I did. I treated people. I yelled at bad bosses. I once gave CPR to a guy with a chicken bone in his throat and no pants on. That's not combat. That's Tuesday. A few smirks appeared across the crew. But since I've been dragged into this mess, I figured I might as well try to fix something. Earth's healthcare system is a disaster. From what I've seen, so is yours. So here's an idea. Let's stop turning hospitals into battlegrounds. Let's stop targeting medics because they happen to know where arteries are. And let's stop pretending that compassion is a weakness. She outlined the proposal briefly, listing the core tenets of the patient protocol. Her voice never wavered. Her words struck like a hammer wrapped in a bandage. By the end of the speech, she stood silently, waiting. Then the feed cut. No applause. No immediate response. Just the quiet hum of the ship and a few blinking lights. Ilix was the first to speak. That was, surprisingly, not a disaster. Renalik added, I believe she may have initiated policy reform via passive-aggressive advocacy. Claire collapsed into a chair. I need a nap. And a snack. Telix watched her for a moment. You just threw a medical grenade into the heart of galactic politics. Do you think they'll buy it? They'll try to ignore it, she said. But they can't unsee it. And now they know that the nurse they thought was a threat is capable of much worse. And somewhere, far away, in a room filled with shadowed figures, a political leader turned off the broadcast, leaned back, and muttered a single word under his breath. Trouble. Claire sat on the edge of the medbay table, peeling a bandage from her forearm and watching the last flicker of the summit transmission fade from the screen. It had been 2 hours since she gave that speech, and the silence that followed wasn't comforting. There were no threats, no counterdemands, no diplomatic messages or drone strikes. Just an eerie stillness across all known channels, like the galaxy had inhaled but hadn't decided whether to laugh or scream yet. The crew moved quietly around her, their usual chatter replaced with wary glances and half-formed sentences. It was the kind of silence that filled hospitals right before someone's heart monitor flatlined. Claire knew it well. And she hated it. Ilex broke the tension by barging into the room holding a tray of food shaped like disappointment and questionable science. He dropped it in front of her and beamed. Eat. You're a revolutionary now. Revolutions need calories. Claire raised an eyebrow. This looks like freeze-dried regret. It's got protein. Probably. Also it glows. That means nutrients, right? She poked it with a fork. It pulsed faintly like it was alive. She pushed it aside and grabbed a cup of something hot instead. The warmth was grounding. Across the room, Renalik was treating a burn victim with his usual quiet efficiency, occasionally glancing over like he expected her to spontaneously combust or declare a new law. Ever since her message had gone out, the crew had started treating her differently. Not like a prisoner, or a leader, or even a nurse. More like a force. Something inevitable. Something unpredictable. It made her want to scream and laugh at the same time. Telix entered without a word and handed her a datapad. She scanned the contents quickly. Reports. Movement. Reactions. So they're not attacking, she said slowly. Not yet. But several factions have rerouted their fleets. They're either avoiding us or preparing for something. Claire leaned back against the wall. The image of her own tired face speaking to half the galaxy still burned in her mind. She hadn't meant to change the system. She just wanted them to stop shooting at her. But now it was out there. And even if most of the galaxy thought she was insane, there would be some who listened. Some who saw past the myth and into the messy truth. A nurse who survived too many shifts with too little help, who turned chaos into function and field surgery into a strategic weapon. Someone who refused to stay quiet while the galaxy kept breaking itself in half. Ilex perked up suddenly as the console on the wall beeped. Incoming signal, he said, scrambling toward it. Not military. Encrypted. Local relay. Claire stood, instinct taking over. Play it, she said. The screen flickered, then came to life. A grainy image appeared. A man in a suit. Human. Earth-based. Behind him, the seal of the Terran Health Authority. His face was tight with discomfort. Claire Monroe, he began, this message is unofficial. Off record. But it comes with support. Your actions have triggered political chaos on at least 3 colonial planets. You've put our name into conversations we've never been allowed in. There's confusion. Anger. But also, inspiration. Claire blinked. The man on screen continued. We don't have the authority to offer you protection. But know this. You are not alone. Nurses across our colonies are marching. Protesting. Demanding reform. Some are calling it the Monroe Protocol. I suggest you start getting used to the name. The message ended. Silence returned. Claire stared at the screen, then slowly sat back down. Ilex looked awestruck. Renalik blinked twice, clearly overwhelmed. Telix simply nodded, as if it was inevitable. So now I'm a revolution, she muttered. Seems like it, said Telix. She shook her head. I didn't ask for this. That's what makes it work, he replied. The following days were a blur of negotiations, standoffs, and unexpected alliances. The summit had heard her words. Some laughed. Some cursed. But some listened. Minor factions began broadcasting support for the Interstellar Patient Protocol. Independent med stations pledged neutrality in conflict zones. One alien warlord reportedly called a ceasefire to rewatch her speech. The shift was small, subtle, but undeniable. But with attention came danger. An informant on a passing freighter delivered word of a bounty still circulating in secret. A new one. Higher. Anonymous sponsor. Capture preferred. Eliminate if necessary. Claire read the report and didn't even flinch. So they still want me dead, she said calmly. Ilex hovered nearby, visibly distressed. Maybe we should leave the quadrant. Find a place where they can't reach us. And do what, hide forever? Clare shook her head. No. I'm not done here. Telix placed a hand on her shoulder. Then we stand with you. Whatever comes next. It came the next day. A transmission hacked their main comms array. No image. Just a voice. Smooth, clinical, like a surgeon preparing to make a decisive incision. You are a disruption. You are a myth. And myths must be broken. You will surrender or be erased. Clare leaned toward the console. I've already been erased once. Didn't stick. The voice replied without pause. Then it will be permanent this time. The signal cut. The ship went quiet. No one moved. Clare stood up slowly, pulled on her gloves, and headed for the medbay. Prep for incoming casualties, she said. Telix called after her. We don't even know when they're coming. We know enough, she replied. This time we're not running. When the attack came, it was fast and brutal. Ships surrounded them, weapons hot. Clare didn't wait for orders. She gave them. She turned her crew into medics and warriors, not killers but defenders. The same hands that had once stitched wounds now rerouted shields, manned turrets, stabilized gravity fields mid-battle. She fought the way she knew best. Efficiently. Desperately. Unapologetically. At one point she found herself performing triage between cannon blasts, barking orders over the intercom while manually compressing a collapsed lung. And when the final blast echoed through the stars and the enemy ships fled, limping and stunned, Clare stood in the wrecked command deck with blood on her boots and a pulse monitor still attached to her arm. They didn't win because they had better weapons. They won because she refused to let anyone die unnecessarily. Later, back in the medbay, patching up the last injured crew member, she heard a beep. A message. From Earth. A new file. Classified. She opened it. Top-level security, replicant initiative in progress, C. Monroe profile uploaded. She stared at the screen. They were cloning her. Somewhere, someone had decided one Clare Monroe wasn't enough. She didn't know whether to laugh or start drinking again. Telix entered, saw the file, and froze. They think they can control you, he said. Clare looked up, calm. Let them try. She pulled off her gloves, sipped her coffee, and returned to work. Because the galaxy wasn't healed yet. And she wasn't done saving it.